Hello people, this is Yu-Gi-Oh! Team Niche again, and today we're here to show you our Gravekeeper's deck profile. Gravekeeper is one very old archetype. It was firstly mentioned by Marek in the original series of the Yu-Gi-Oh! And today, well, let's say more than 15 years later, we are still doing Gravekeeper deck profiles. So, let's start. For the monsters in the Gravekeeper decks, you mostly have a limited set of monsters. Of course, there are some versions of the Gravekeeper deck that are playing also some other monsters, but those are mostly fun version with some experimenting. This version here is supposed to be as much as balanced it could be, but also it's worth mentioning that it was built for going first. So when you are playing Gravekeeper deck, you mostly want to go first in order to resolve one of the strongest cards in the game, which is Royal Tribute. So for the monsters, I play Gravekeeper's Commandant, Gravekeeper Spiritualist, Gravekeeper Descendant, Gravekeeper Recruiter, and Gravekeeper Headman. For the Gravekeeper's Commandant, I chose to play 3 copies, and I think that it is pretty much mandatory. Gravekeeper Commandant can search for the Necro Valley, and Necro Valley is, as we all know, the main card of the deck. And beside that it can search Necro Valley, Gravekeeper Commandant can also, when Necro Valley is on the field, be normal summoned and have 2100 attack points, which is not irrelevant. Of course, with the relatively new card, Necro Valley Throne, with which you can add the Gravekeeper Commandant, and Gravekeeper Commandant adds Necro Valley, you practically have 9 cards that give you direct access to the Necro Valley. Necro Valley is a main condition for this deck to work. That's why it's really self-explanatory why I have chosen to play 3 copies of Gravekeeper's Commandant. Now, next card is Gravekeeper Spiritualist. Gravekeeper Spiritualist is relatively new card, but it's very powerful. It gives you ability to fusion monsters in the Gravekeeper deck, something that was very unlikely a couple of years ago. With Gravekeeper Spiritualist, you can special summon Gravekeeper Supernaturalist, which is one of the winning condition in the strategy of the deck. That's why I chose to run 3 copies of Spiritualist. Next card is Gravekeeper Descendant. For the Descendant, you can find a lot of versions on the net that don't run Descendant, and there are a lot of builds that run Gravekeeper Heretic instead of Gravekeeper Descendant. Gravekeeper Heretic is also a powerful card. I have also given it a lot of thought should I play Heretic or Descendant, but I decided to play Descendant because Descendant is very good card to take care of some dangerous card that your opponent plays that can stop you for playing. Because what the Descendant practically say is that you can attribute one other face-up Gravekeeper monster to target one card your opponent controls and to destroy it. Of course, the card says target one card your opponent controls, which means that this is also a way to get rid of some problematic back row cards of your opponent. Of course, Heretic has its sides as well, because it is unaffected by all other card effects, as long as Necro Valley is on the field. And if you can pump it up and hold Necro Valley on the field, there Heretic can be really good beater and can also be great addition to the deck. However, because this is more balanced version, a version that gives stability, I have chosen to play Descendant. Next card is Recruiter. Now, Recruiter is probably trademark of some old school Yu-Gi-Oh! Gravekeeper decks, but in modern format is not as much as powerful probably as we would like it to be. Of course, I chose to play a triple Recruiter. Recruiter is one of the my favorite card practically in this deck, beside Necro Valley. And of course, as we all know, it adds a Gravekeeper monster from the deck to the hand. Here it says a Gravekeeper monster that has 1500 or less defense points, but I have built this deck in order that Gravekeeper's Recruiter can add you any other Gravekeeper monster, which is not irrelevant. Of course, in order to do that, Gravekeeper must be sent to the graveyard from the field and not from the hand or from the deck or something like that, which is a bad side, but there are ways to also make use of this effect. Now for the last monster, I run Gravekeeper's Headman. Gravekeeper Headman is a nice card, also relatively new support. It gives you access to the Gravekeeper level 4 monster in the graveyard. And now, of course, since Gravekeeper's Headman is a level 3 monster, you cannot go to Xyz summoning of some of the Xyz monster, but you can go to the Link summoning, or if you bring back Gravekeeper Spiritualist from the graveyard, you can also conduct a fusion summon and bring out Gravekeeper's Supernaturalist. Now that it's all for the monsters. You can maybe run some other ratio of some monsters in order maybe to make more stun version of the deck, but I believe that this is the best ratio of the cards, of the monster cards. Now for the spell cards, I run Allure of Darkness, Spellbook of Knowledge, Necro Throne, Royal Tribute, Spellbook of Secrets, Gravekeeper Spell, Scapegoat, Hidden Temples of the Necro Valley, and of course, Necro Valley. Now, as can be seen, most of these cards are draw power cards, search cards or something like that that speeds up the deck. In order for this deck to be realistic, you need to speed it up as much as you can, because in its nature, Gravekeeper is actually a really slow stun deck. That's why I play triple Allure of Darkness. I have 9 dark targets, so I choose to play 3 copies of Allure of Darkness, but also maybe instead of 1 copy of Allure of Darkness, you can play 1 Upstart Goblin. Next is Spellbook of Knowledge. As you can also see, I run Spellbook of Secrets and Spellbook of Knowledge, which is a reduced spellbook engine because I don't run Spellbook Magician of the Prophecy. Why is that? Spellbook of Knowledge demands to send spellcaster monster from the field to the graveyard. All Gravekeeper monsters that I run in this deck are spellcasters. That's why you don't need to put Magician of the Prophecy in the deck, but in some versions, of course, if you find place, you can also put Spellbook Magician of the Prophecy. Beside that, I believe that double Spellbook of Knowledge and double Spellbook of Secrets is the ratio of the spellbook cards that you should play. Next card is triple copy of the Necro Valley Throne. Necro Valley Throne is a really good support card, the best one probably, and I definitely recommend playing it at 3. Next card is Royal Tribute. I decided to play 2 copies of Royal Tribute. As mentioned before, this is basically going first deck. If you resolve Royal Tribute while you're going first, your winning probability of that you will win in the duel is growing. That's why it is very good to see how you resolve Royal Tribute at turn 1, but also on the other hand, you would like to resolve it at turn 1. If you see Royal Tribute too often in the later stage of the game, it probably isn't at the turn 1. That is why I chose to play only 2 copies and not 3 copies, although I completely agree that the main power of the deck is resolving Royal Tribute as fast as it could be resolved. I have explained Spellbook of Secrets, and the next card is Gravekeeper Stella. Now for this card, maybe a lot of you will say that this card was good, maybe 10 years ago or something like that, but still I decided to play one copy of Gravekeeper Stella, and now I will explain why. For example, if you can resolve Stella and bring back from the graveyard Spiritualist and some other whatever other Gravekeeper card, and then to use other effect of the Necro Valley Throne, which lets you conduct an additional normal summon for the Gravekeeper monster so that you can put Spiritualist on the field, you can basically, in a move where you already had a normal summon, special summon Supernaturalist from the extra deck, which is really good because you want to see Supernaturalist on the field as much as possible. That is reason why I decided still to put one Gravekeeper Stella in the deck, although I can completely understand if you decide not to put a single copy in. Next card is Scapegoat. Once again, since this is going first deck, your Scapegoat is really good card to play when you're going first. You can set it and then you can resolve it later. Of course, main reason probably because this card isn't played as much as it has played before is because it is down to 1. But when you're playing this deck, there aren't really that much bad sides from the card because it prevents you from summoning other monsters the turn you activate this card. But since you extremely rarely special summon against your opponent's turn in Gravekeeper monsters, there aren't really bad sides of the card. And of course, it gives you access to some broken Link 4 cards, which is really good for the slower decks like Gravekeepers. Now, Hidden Temples of the Necro Valley. I play 2 copies of Hidden Temples of Necro Valley. I believe that it is enough. Maybe you can even cut it down to 1. But Hidden Temples of the Necro Valley, while a Gravekeeper monsters and a Necro Valley is on the field, prevents your opponent from special summoning, which is always broken. And if you open with, for example, Supernaturalist and Hidden Temples of the Necro Valley, once again, your odds for winning are really good. Last spell card is of course Necro Valley, and if you have opened this video, you probably know what Necro Valley does, trademark of the deck, and probably best card in the deck. One maybe of the best fill spell in the game generally. Now for the trap lineup, I left 9 spaces for trap cards. Of course, you can maybe increase that number to 10 or 11, but I believe that 9 is appropriate. Now, of course, when you're building a trap lineup, the main thing that you want to know is against who you are playing at that moment. Of course, it is worth mentioning that Gravekeeper deck isn't the deck that is meta relevant. It wasn't meta relevant in the last 10 years, and without some broken support, there is a very little chance that it will be meta relevant in the upcoming 10 years. However, although for some bigger and large scale tournaments, Gravekeeper deck isn't as viable as we would like it to be, for some smaller tournaments and for some tournaments where you mostly know which players are going to play, what decks are they playing, Gravekeeper deck can make a difference, especially when when your opponent don't expect for you to play it. So the element of surprise is pretty much important. For the element of surprise, you and in every stand deck, regardless of whether it's Gravekeeper, some anti-meta or something like that, you need to know what specific play of your opponent would you like to stop. For that, of course, you need to have detailed knowledge about your opponent's decks. And when you build your trap lineup, you should take everything of that in mind. However, regardless of the trap cards you choose to play, I recommend triple Solemn Judgment because it can negate everything, 1 Necro Valley Temple because it has a really nice effect when it is destroyed, if it gets destroyed, and 2 or 3 copies of Crackdown, or Manhunt, how it is called here. For the rest, for the other three cards, I choose to play Quaking Mirror Force, Storming Mirror Force, once again because opponent doesn't expect Mirror Forces in the duel, and one copy of Solemn Warning. And of course, all of these three cards you can change with some other staple counter traps like Solemn Strike, maybe put in additional copy of the Solemn Warning, and counter traps like that. That is pretty much all for the main deck. Now for the extra deck, as mentioned a couple of times before, I play 2 copies of Gravekeeper Supernaturalist. It is probably designed to be some kind of a boss monster for the new Gravekeepers. It has some decent effects, it is not bad, and that's why I would like to choose not more than 2 copies. Of course, since there is a place in the extra deck, you can also choose to run 3 copies of the Supernaturalist, but I think that 2 is enough. Of course, as mentioned, this deck mostly goes into Xyz monsters that are rank 4. In some specific rare cases where you have Headman and Recruiter on the field, or double Headman or double Recruiter, you can also go to the rank 3. That is why I put in Break Sword. You can also maybe put in Bamboozling Shadow or something like that, but I don't really recommend that. While rank 4 monsters are pretty much better, and you can see them pretty much often in these decks. That's why I chose to play Time Thief Redoer. I think it's probably one of the best generic Xyz 4 cards that appeared in the last couple of years. Of course, I play Bagushka, maybe the other best generic rank 4 that appeared in the last couple of years. Bagushka 8 when you brick at turn 1. I play Silent Honor Arc because it is good for defense, and of course it is good for offense because it can steal your opponent's monster. I play Evils from Exit Night because it is probably strongest rank 4 in the game. And I play Abyss Dweller. Abyss Dweller is auto-win against some of the decks like Mermails or some other decks that are using Graveyard. But also it's worth mentioning that since you have Necro Valley, Dweller is probably not as powerful as in some other decks. However, I still choose to have Abyss Dweller in the extra deck rather than not having it. Now for the Link monsters, there is Standard Scapegoat package, extended version, because you can play both Link Spider and Link Kuriboh. And beside Scapegoat package, I chose to play Nightmare Unicorn because it's really good card, and I chose to play Witch's Apprentice because you can special summon it almost any time. All of the monsters in the deck are dark except Commandant. That's it for the extra deck, and now for the side deck. I didn't build an actual side deck. Side deck is built from, let's say, honorable mentions from some cards that you might include in the main deck, where of course I believe that Super Poly is a good solution. You can put in some Solemn Strike. There are 3 cards that I would like to discuss further. It's Gravekeeper Spy. I chose not to play Gravekeeper Spy. I believe that it is slow for the modern game. I believe that there are better cards, but I also can see and can build a version that can also play Gravekeeper Spy, and that will also resolve one of my favorite combos, when Gravekeeper Spy special summon Gravekeeper Shaman, that prevents your opponent from playing further. Next card is Crowley, the first Professor. Crowley is a great card. It will definitely see play, and it is good because it really gives you advantage of the Spellbook engine. Since I chose not to play Spellbook Magician of the Prophecy in the deck, I also choose not to play Crowley, although in Gravekeeper, since it demands only 2 spellcaster monsters, and all Gravekeeper's monsters are spellcasters, you can summon it anytime. Last card that I would like to discuss is Card of Demise. Card of Demise is probably my favorite spell card in the game. I enjoyed playing Card of Demise. I put 3 copies of Card of Demise in practically any of my deck But now Card of Demise is limited to 1. When Card of Demise is at 1, you don't really have that, it's not needed as it was needed before. Also, it can draw you back more than it can push you forward, because when you're playing Card of Demise, you are hoping that you will draw Card of Demise. You are looking for your Card of Demise, but you don't see it as much as often as you saw it when it was in 3, which is logical. And that's why, although I really like the card, I really respect it, the art is also really good, I chose not to play Card of Demise. You can play it in some stun versions of the deck, but in this version where you also have special summoning, fusion summoning, scapegoat, and other cards that allows you more interaction during your opponent's turn, I chose not to play Card of Demise. That's pretty much it. I hope that you enjoy it. I would really like to hear your opinions and your comments about the deck. Since this deck is really old, a lot of players since some specific time have probably played against a Gravekeeper deck. So I am really hoping to hear your opinions, to hear maybe what I can improve in my deck, to see what can I maybe add to extra deck, and of course to check out your opinion. Is Necro Valley probably the best field spell in the game? That's it. I hope you enjoyed, and live long and prosper, and see ya. Goodbye.